It's My Nerd World, a Star Wars show. What's going on, Star Wars fans? How you doing this week? What are you watching Star Wars-wise right now? I genuinely want to know. Drop me an email, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com, or if you're enjoying this on YouTube, leave a comment up on YouTube. I want to know what Star Wars you're consuming right now and why. On this week's episode, Bespin Bulletin gives an Ahsoka Season 2 update, and how the world changed before the sequel series. Just a message to the lifelong fans, myself being one as well. As always, thank you so much for checking out the episode. If you enjoy science fiction, and I'll give you more details later on, I hope you'll support My Nerd World by giving EMBARK, the science fiction space opera series, available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. 7 books in all in the series. I hope you'll give it a look on Amazon.com. And again, I'll give you some details at the end of this week's episode. Now, let's go ahead and get to the show.
Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you. Just let it in.
It is My Nerd World, and welcome to it. I'm your host, John Justice, a Star Wars show. I'm glad that you were with another episode. I just wrapped up the other weekly podcast that I do, talking about Depeche Mode, because I'm a massive Depeche Mode fan. I've been a Depeche Mode fan for almost as long as I've been a Star Wars fan, although, being honest, Star Wars came first. I was a fan of Star Wars, as I've said many times, before I was a fan of anything else. I do want to dovetail a bit off of my commentary on this week's Depeche Mode show, just with an observation that I had and how it relates to Star Wars, the future of Star Wars, and the current controversies swirling around Star Wars. Now, before we get to that, I do have some news to share this week. And it's news that I'm incredibly excited about.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Live action Star Wars content. My favorite piece is Ahsoka. I've come to that conclusion. I do love The Mandalorian, especially seasons 1 and 2. But Ahsoka hits all the right notes for me. And it's the one show, live-action Disney Plus streaming show, that, much like the films, I find myself revisiting over and over again. There's a Patterson cut, and the Patterson cut, for those that aren't familiar, there is a Star Wars fan who has taken some of the live-action Star Wars shows and has edited them down to essentially cinematic runtimes, even adding in special effects. Most notable for what he did with Kenobi, but he's also done this now for Ahsoka. I have not watched either. I'm more curious to watch the Kenobi Patterson cut, simply because I found that series to be so problematic. I'm curious to see what he did with it. There is a bit of news. Ewan McGregor was asked during a recent convention about things that he would like to see happen, and dropped that there were discussions going on for a Kenobi Season 2. Kenobi Season 2 is not something that I personally need. If they do a Kenobi Season 2, I personally hope that it's better than Kenobi Season 1. I've tried to go back and watch that, and it's just missing so much, and I won't go down that road. Again. Ahsoka, on the other hand, again, is a show that I'm a huge fan of. Bespin Bulletin writes this week, it's been over a year since the Ahsoka series was airing on Disney+. Lucasfilm has confirmed a second season of the series is in the works. There's been very little updates in regard to the second season, but we do have an update now as to when the cameras might start rolling. Now, recently, the star of Ahsoka a star of Ahsoka, Natasha Lee Bordizzo, who plays Sabine Wren, and she's my favorite character on the show. She's one of the reasons why I'm such a huge fan of that series. I was a fan of Sabine in the Rebels cartoon, but I really enjoy Natasha's live-action portrayal of Sabine. To me, she is the highlight of the show. That's not to say that Rosario Dawson doesn't do a great job as Ahsoka. I enjoy her too, but the character that I gravitate towards is Sabine. And to a lesser extent, Ezra, who I enjoyed quite a bit, but he obviously doesn't show up until the last few episodes. Now, she had mentioned that filming on the series would already be underway come August of 2025. Now, some fans took this to mean that filming would begin in August, but apparently that's not the case and not what Bordizzo said. It's just that the second season will already be filming in August of next year. Now, over the past couple of months, Bespin Bulletin has heard the same window for the start of filming on the second season of Ahsoka repeatedly. I planned to put out this information last week, he writes, but procrastination got the better of me, and that's after weeks of not feeling motivated to share this information. Anyway, April is the month I've heard the most. May came up once or twice, but April has been the most frequent month, and I've been hearing either way it's the spring. Now, granted, things could change. The window to begin filming could change as the months go by, but at least as of now, and has been for a couple of months, the current plan is to begin filming sometime in April or May of next year, and would likely run until around August or September. Now, production weekly can be hit or miss, but they, in the latter stages of last week, shared a May start, which aligns with the information I'd been hearing for weeks and months. The second season of the Disney Plus streaming series will likely debut on the streaming service in 2026. The next Star Wars series, Skeleton Crew, is due to be released on Disney Plus December 3rd, which means we should be getting a lot more promotion on that very soon. The second and final season of Andor is due to be released sometime next year, likely within the first 6 months of the year. Star Wars fans will have at least one live-action series a year for the next couple of years, and I'm sure there will be new animated projects scattered amongst those series also. Dave Filoni is currently writing the second season of Ahsoka, but also has his hands full with the next theatrical Star Wars movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu, which he wrote with Mandalorian creator Jon Favreau, who is directing the film. The Mandalorian and Grogu is due to release in theaters in May 22nd of 2026. The Mando and Grogu, first Star Wars theatrical release since The Rise of Skywalker in 2019. It's just incredible. The Rise of Skywalker is set to get a follow-up, although that's a big question mark, in the Daisy Ridley-led Star Wars working title New Jedi Order, expected to release in December of 26. But over the past few weeks, there's been reports about production on New Order being delayed until next year, and this is true. But this is not anything new to write home about. Production on the new Daisy Ridley post-Rise of Skywalker film was initially slated to begin this year, but as Bespin Bulletin exclusively reported back in June, the film's production was delayed into 2025 as Lucasfilm wanted to perfect the script before moving forward with filming. Daisy Ridley herself even stated that shooting is expected to begin next year.
This is not going to go the way you think.
I just wanted to take a moment and, again, I stumbled across something watching a film called The Greatest Hits on Hulu, which I very much enjoyed. The story of the movie is a woman who is able to travel back to a moment in time based off the song that she is listening to. That song has a connection to one of the first times that she heard it in the past. So it's based off of what we all experience listening to music and how we get those nostalgic feelings. And yet she is actually able to travel back in time, and I won't ruin it apart from that. But while watching this film, I was talking with my wife, Melinda, and I had this epiphany. And it may be something that I have thought about before, but just never really all that deep or subconsciously. But being 52 years old, those individuals, say 45, 46-ish and older, we're the last generation that experienced the majority of our lives pre-internet and social networking. It's a pretty incredible thought, at least in my opinion. No other generation will live in a world without the internet and those black mirrors in our hands that dominate so much of our time. I was just really struck by that. And as I thought about it further, no one seems to take into account, at least I've never heard commentary regarding this. There could be, I just haven't seen it. But no one has taken into account how much the world had changed since the original trilogy and the prequels and when the sequels came out. Now, the prequels started to show us where things were going. So the internet became widely available to the public in April of 93. We got the special editions around 97. By that time, the internet was, increasing in people's homes at a fairly exponential rate. I remember going to my dad's house and getting on the computer. 96 is when I got into radio, and the radio station was just now getting into having the internet specifically. I remember when 9/11 happened, that we had the internet in a production studio, but even then it was very rudimentary and we couldn't get very good images off of it just based off of the slow speed of dial-up. When the prequels came out in 99, right around that same time period, we began to, through the course of the release of those films, see the backlash that would ensue and now dominate our pop culture space, all because of the advent of the internet and inevitably social networking and bubbles that would form and commentaries and, to the place where we are today. Star Wars could never be like any other franchise. I know that. I know that now. My view of when Disney purchased it, I hadn't really thought about the fact that we were living in a dramatically different world than what we were even when Revenge of the Sith came out. I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan when that was released, and even then I had a mobile phone, but it wasn't a smartphone. We had texting on it, but still didn't have the availability to get on the internet in a moment's notice with these powerful little tiny mini computers and eventually black screens sitting in our hands. As a lifelong Star Wars fan, you know this if you are of a similar age. I mean, the difference now between when the originals came out and the prequels, it's night and day the way that we consume information and how entertainment is just completely changed. Star Wars is special in what George Lucas created and what we, as that last generation, discovered. The question of, what does Star Wars look like in a post-internet social networking smartphone world? Well, we now know. Going into the Force Awakens, there was an abundance of care that was made to make sure that what they were putting out was going to meet the expectation of the fans. Those that say and make the comment that the films are kind of made by fanboys, there's a truth to that because they are. But J.J. Abrams is a fantastic filmmaker, as is Rian Johnson. But you can see the care that was put in The Force Awakens, which is why it's the most popular of, apart from Rogue One, okay, which also is close in terms of releases, right, to The Force Awakens, also was handled very, very carefully to make sure that they did not screw up a film that was so closely aligned with the original trilogy. Well, after that, everything kind of started falling apart. I love The Last Jedi. Do not misunderstand. But The Last Jedi is as much a Star Wars film as it is a Rian Johnson film. And the lifelong fans weren't ready to deal with that yet. A new generation was getting closer to dealing with that. But the controversy that ensued post The Last Jedi, you and I both know. And now, of course, we certainly know what's happened since then. And I've reached a conclusion that Star Wars should have been treated different than every other franchise, and unfortunately, Disney didn't do that. I tend to lean more towards those skeptics now who have been proven to be right on a lot of occasions that the oversaturation of Star Wars has not served the franchise well at all. Listen, I'm excited for new Star Wars projects, but not in the way that I used to be. I question whether or not I'm ever going to get to that level of excitement that we had waiting for the release of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, but to a lesser extent, The Rise of Skywalker. I did have that feeling going into Rogue One, lesser when it came to Solo. Certainly with the release of The Mandalorian I did, but that has even changed now. And also, like The Mandalorian, and I've talked about this on the show before, with The Mandalorian, that first season was very, very carefully crafted. You go back and watch those first few episodes of that, of The Mandalorian, and compare it to Season 3, there is a stark difference. For an abundance of different reasons. All of this is to say that I think that Star Wars, and there's no putting the genie back in the bottle at this point in time, I think that Bob Iger is doing the right move, even though I'm still fine getting more Star Wars, but I want to see the franchise be healthy so we get quality and not quantity. But what James Cameron is doing with Avatar is what Disney should have done with Star Wars. Think about that. Now, Avatar is different, and I don't want to go too far in sort of breaking down my thoughts about that franchise. However, it makes a ton of money. A lot of people didn't expect that The Way of Water was going to make the money that it did, but it did. And the next films are going to make just as much money. And a part of that reason is the spectacle. What James Cameron is able to do with Avatar is probably the closest comparison you can give to what George Lucas did with Star Wars. There is so much that can be done with technology. You can virtually do anything. But you still need to do it right. And you still need to have good storytelling. And that's what James Cameron does with his films, and especially with the Avatar series. Now, the Avatar series doesn't seep into the cultural zeitgeist the way that Star Wars does. I don't see anybody walking around wearing Avatar shirts or an abundance of Avatar toys or people going to conventions dressed like 10-foot-tall cat people, blue cat people. Doesn't matter, though. The fans flock to see Avatar. Why? Because they know they're going to see a spectacle. They know that James Cameron is going to deliver something that they probably have never seen before. Be transported to a place that looks absolutely real, even though it's 100% fake. That's the kind of care and attention that Star Wars needs. It doesn't need to transport in terms of the spectacle of what James Cameron is doing with Avatar, but there needs to be a scarcity to it, to where it is special, so that when you see it, you're not suddenly going, oh, I've seen that before, oh, I've seen this here, to where they don't have to rely on, and I hate using fan service because Star Wars is all fan service. I mean, everything in it is things that fans enjoy. But to inject things that harken back to other moments in time in an attempt to go and make it special, they need to just create something that's special, that's genuine and authentic, and isn't trying to go and spread a message. And yes, is scarce. I hate thinking about the distance between the Star Wars films when they were being released, but there was something to that. There's nothing quite like waiting for the fanfare to kick in, the yellow Star Wars logo to fade off into the screen as you sit back, with your arms on the seat rest, waiting to read the crawl that hopefully you haven't been spoiled of reading, not knowing what that first opening shot is going to be. That is an incredible feeling that I hope that we one day can get back to. But it's also something that I look forward to with James Cameron now. One thing that James Cameron said that really stuck with me was he decided he wanted to do his own Star Wars, and that's exactly what he's doing. And I hope that Disney is able to turn things around, because the world absolutely changed after the prequels came out. And unfortunately, Star Wars was treated like it was a Marvel franchise, and it was never supposed to be that. I don't even know if George Lucas grasped that. I think he was fine at first at what Disney was doing because he wanted to do more television and wanted to tell more stories. And I think that's great, but it's got to be of quality, or else you're going to be in a situation we are now, because there are a lot of voices because of that technology that arrived post the prequels that are able to go and voice their opinion now. And it has an impact on the fandom. It has an impact on the decision-making of these companies that own these IPs. Hopefully they'll turn things around. So much of this is tied to society as a whole. It's always the big question. Where are we all going? Who knows? And the same thing rings true when it comes to Star Wars as well. It's just interesting to me that, again, no one seems to take into account how much of the world absolutely changed after certainly the original trilogy and the prequels, and how us lifelong fans lived in that time of the original trilogy, how amazing it was not having the internet, not having a smartphone, playing with our toys. That's why the toys were so popular. I could go on and on and on, but I won't.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Ray 2017 writes, based off of last week's episode, let's also not forget that Star Wars Rebels laid the groundwork for a whole ton of Star Wars content. It expanded upon the lore and added more significance and importance to the original trilogy, as well as a tiny piece of the puzzle that completes the picture. No, you're absolutely right. And thank you for that. Listen, before I let you go, you like science fiction already. If you like to listen to audiobooks or you like to read science fiction and you haven't yet, check out my science fiction space opera series, EMBARK. I wrote it because of my love of Star Wars. I wanted something for fans of the genre of all ages that they could enjoy. Taft, in book 1 of the EMBARK series, set in 2172, as the world faces its end. The first story is a post-apocalyptic space opera, is the best way I can describe it. And in that first book, Taft has found something, and humanity won't survive without it. When ship mechanic Taft Guardia agrees to help starfighter pilot Keith Amaro investigate a cryptic message from her late aerospace engineer father, they embark on a perilous journey of discovery amid a looming planet-wide industrial catastrophe. In the middle of a global evacuation, 2 megacorporations, rival megacorporations, they're on the brink of interstellar war as Taft, Keitha, and their ragtag crew discover what may be the only hope of saving Earth's evacuees from annihilation. From book 1, 6 books follow, 7 books in all in the series, available in ebook, Kindle Unlimited on Amazon, hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. You can also purchase paperbacks directly from me at a reduced price with an incredibly cheap shipping. All you got to do is email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, and tell me which book you are interested in purchasing. I have them both in paperback and hardcover. Listen, you enjoy Star Wars or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. So I hope you'll check out my science fiction space opera series. It's epic, filled with a ton of really cool technology, romance, a lot of unique action sequences. Listen, if you enjoy that stuff and Star Wars, EMBARK is perfect for you. Go to Amazon.com and search for EMBARK, EMBARK. But pick up book 1 today in your preferred format. And book 1 in ebook is discounted. And hopefully you'll enjoy the ride like Star Wars Santa, and you'll continue to enjoy all 7 books in the series. Again, head on over to Amazon.com. They make great gifts, and if you purchase those paperbacks or hardcovers directly from me, I will autograph them at no charge. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. But head on over to Amazon.com and check out my space opera series. I would really appreciate it. And if you already have and have not left a review for the books, please go and leave reviews for all the books that you have read. That really helps me with my sales and placement of the books on Amazon. I need as many reviews that I can get, especially outside of book 1. So I hope you take a moment and go leave a review as well if you have enjoyed any of the books in the series. So with that, thank you so much for checking out the podcast. As always, I hope wherever you are, you're happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. God bless, and I'll talk to you again next week from that galaxy far, far away. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.